Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. I'm working on some reels that Tom from Tennessee sent in. And today I got the opportunity to work on a Gander Mountain reel. It's the Vortex 2000. It's a nice size reel, ideal for rivers and streams and lakes. Nice casting reel, I guess. There's something going on in here. When it bottoms down on the spool, I'm hearing a click, 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 right? We'll try and figure out what that is over the course of this service. Well, before I get started, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you like the art of fishing reel service and repair, if you like to learn how fishing reels are made, how they come together, and well, how to service them, maybe even service your own. And that's kind of what this channel is set up for. The idea behind Second Chance Tackle is don't make it disposable, keep it fishing, and it'll last you for a long time to come if you do the proper maintenance on it. So if you subscribe, please use that notification button, and that will help to let you know when I'm posting and what I'm posting. And well, you'll have the opportunity to see if that's one that you want to watch. Well, we'll be removing the exterior pieces and parts. First thing you want to do is test, see if, well, we don't have that click, click, click anymore. So let's look underneath. Yeah, what we have here is a bent spring. So this is a little bait alarm, if you will, or lets you know that your drag is coming out. And this one's been bent. So something pulled that out and away from nesting on the spool. That's a fairly easy rebend. There's two screws right here that are holding that little assembly in. You'll see that we have a big kind of a crack bend up. We'll be able to rebend that and take care of that little noisemaker there. Worst case, somebody had sent me a note. They lost the spring on one of those. How do we get that apart and so on? And quite honestly, the worst case is you run your reel without it. It's not going to affect casting. It's not going to affect bringing the fish in. It only lets you know when your line is being pulled out. And generally speaking, unless you're nesting that in a rod holder or something and walking away and waiting for that click to tell you got fish on, then you really don't need it. And I can't recall ever using it, but that's just me. You saw that I removed the handle by taking off the screw cap on the one side. It's kind of going through like that. This goes through the main gear, pulls the handle in, and that's how you drive the main gear with this handle. When I remove my pieces and parts, I put them into a parts tray. I use the bottom of a fast food container. I recommend that you have a system for dealing with the parts that you remove. Mine is somewhat organized chaos, but I know where all the pieces are. I use the corners of those parts trays to help me, and it serves me well when it becomes time to reinstall. This is a 10mm nut. I started to remove it by turning it leftward, which is the normal way you would do that, and I was meeting resistance. When you do that and find that happens, turn it the opposite way. These are reverse threads sometime, and that's what's happening here. Your normal clockwise removal or tightening has become the removal for this side. Well, this is a Gander Mountain reel, and Gander Mountain, of course, didn't make reels. They're just they were a sporting goods reseller, just like Bass Pro and Cabela's. They contracted to have these made. Not quite sure who made the Gander Mountain reels. Gander Mountain went bankrupt, went out of business, and it was purchased by the guy who did the Prophet on CNBC, that series, Marcus Labonis. He purchased it. He was the owner of Campmore, and I guess he's got a second iteration of these now, and it's called Gander Outdoors. It's no longer Gander Mountain. So if you find one of these Gander Mountain reels, you know that it's probably at least 5 or 6 years old, and you're not going to have parts support. You're not going to have service support. That all went away with the company going out of business. But if you find them and take care of them, they're actually nice reels that can last for a long time. All right, I removed the bail assembly. Just want to make sure that it trips nicely. One of the things I like to do when I'm servicing a bail assembly is just a little spray of penetrating oil into the two seams where the bail meets the rotor, and one up top on that rotor line guide. just to make sure that it eases it up. If there's any residual dirts and greases and the like, generally that will dissolve them, and you'll be better off in operating it. You do not need to take a bail assembly off as a part of a normal servicing, so I recommend that you just leave it alone unless you find that well, the bail isn't working, in which case of course you got to take it off, examine it, find out if there's a broken piece or part inside. Maybe it got dropped in the sand and it's got a lot of dirt and debris inside there. It needs to be cleaned out. That's fine, but if you don't need to take it apart, if it's working fine, just leave it alone. I'm taking the screws out of the side plate now, putting them onto my table. I want to make sure that the screws are all the same size. So this is the fourth one, and yes, they're all the same size. This says 6 ball bearings. I always like to try and figure out where they are. With those screws out, and of course you can see you had to take the rotor off because this screw here is hiding under that rotor. If you just remove those 3 screws and tried to pull the side plate off, it would not come off. Now we should be able to get it off, and what I'll do is I'm just going to grab a utility knife, try to separate the case that way. Chances are this reel's never been serviced. Actually looks like it's in nice condition. So we have the main gear just came out. We have a bearing in the case here. When I tested this, it was spinning fine. I don't think we have any bearing issues. I'm just going to go ahead and put oil on that. It's an open bearing. Next up then, we will remove the axle shaft. That's connected by a Phillips head screw to the crosswind block. This is basic spinning reel 101 kind of design. I don't know who made this reel, but this is a very common design in spinning reels. So if you become familiar with these, you really don't need to go out and find schematics or hope that schematics exist for this. So I don't even know if you can find them. This uses a oscillation gear system. It's driven off the back of the main gear, and it's kind of stood the test of time in terms of design. All right, that takes care of those parts. And now for the fun one. This has an instant anti-reverse with an override, so Chris is enjoying that. It has a spring that holds them together when you go to remove that gear, the pinion gear and the anti-reverse clutch. So you got to be careful with that little screw. That's probably the only thing in this that'll give you pause for concern. Okay, again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take the 3 screws that are holding this collar in place. I'm going to remove those. This is a good place to tell you to take pictures. For example, where that spring is housed, just in case the thing goes bump in the night. And I used to say use any kind of picture taker. Now I guess the word is image capture device. Use any kind of image capture device. Okay, there's a little ledge. There's 2. One is on this side and one is on this override side. Both of those are holding a spring loop. I'm going to see if I can get that loop off using a micro pliers. Kind of grab the tag. Probably going to be more successful on this end. There's not a lot of tension on this one. Problem is these things fall off. They're so small. This one's even just proving hard to grab. Okay, I think I got it. I got it off. Okay. I'm going to take this off completely just because it's a very easy piece to lose. And it's a very hard piece to find or find a replacement for. As I mentioned, you're not going to find replacement parts for the Gander Mountain reel, so just be very careful as you work on these. With that spring clip removed now, this whole assembly is going to come out just like that. And now is a good time for a picture as well. We have 2 ball bearings, we have an anti-reverse clutch, and we have a little grab here. So what we want to do is just take these off piece by piece. Here's your collar with the bearing facing up. Wrong order. These are shielded bearings. They're not sealed. The oil will seep through them. On the bottom side, you're going to notice a difference. That's the downside when you go to do that. Next up is the anti-reverse clutch. With that lever, I'm going to leave those two on. You do not clean or oil or grease a friction-driven anti-reverse clutch, which is what we have here. Next up is the collar. You want to make sure that you dry that collar if any grease has got through there. We have a small bearing on the bottom. We'll do the same thing here. We're going to oil that bearing. And these parts are not going into my parts tray because we're going to leave that assembly right here. We're going to clean up the pinion gear. We're going to put it right back into position. So the only risk I have here is that I get clumsy and knock a piece to the floor. So I'm trying my best to not do that. All right, inspect the spirals on the pinion gear. They're all clean. This one has a little bit of grease right there. Just use a pick or something to pull that out if you find that. And just looking at this case over my shoulder, the case is clean. I have a ball bearing in the back. We'll oil that one as well. All right, let's start the reassembly of this then. Use fishing reels, greases, and oils when you do that. I'm using Penn Precision Reel Grease as the grease for this reel. And we're going to start by putting some grease onto the teeth of the pinion gear. And this reel's pretty dry, so you don't need to skip on the grease. Next up then, we're going to put the bearing on, then the inner case or cap for the anti-reverse, then our anti-reverse, and then the top cap here. Now I think what I want to do on this, there's a slot in the case here, several slots in the case. This arm has got to come out, so you want to line your slots up in the case, and you want to make sure that the arm is coming out here for the override. When that's on, now I can put that other collar with the bearing on, push that in, make sure that that seats flush, which it does. And we can get that tri-cornered cap and the 3 screws we took out, and we can put those back in. Well, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel in particular, maybe you're working on one and you're stuck, maybe you're trying to find out where you can get parts for a Gander Mountain reel, well, I don't have the answer for that one, but if you have some questions, I'll try to answer those questions for you, and hopefully I'll be able to help you give your reel a second chance. Take your time when you're working on these. You know, I was given early on a little lesson in what it takes for fishing reel repair, and I was told that the 2 most important things you need for reel repair is patience and a sense of humor. And well, I've come to learn that that's very sage advice. You better be able to laugh at yourself. You're going to make mistakes. Things are going to happen beyond your control. Maybe within your control, things are going to happen that just make you laugh because you're wondering why in the world you ever did it that way. And well, you learn from your mistakes. So just be patient, have a sense of humor, you'll get through it. All right, that takes care of the top. You might want to turn it right now, and it's turning fine. And then pull this little override lever in. Yep, we have that anti-reverse. Okay, back to that spring. This is the only part of the whole darn assembly that I get nervous on. Don't want to drop it, lose it, or otherwise. And I think we're going this way with it. So this goes over the tab. And if you don't see this, I'm going to apologize because I have to pay attention here. Otherwise, we're going to be talking about my sense of humor again. All right, and then this goes over the top. Okay, the spring has been reset, and one of the pieces I did not take out and neglected to mention about, there's a V-shaped spring in the case here that keeps tension on this override switch. Just be careful about that one. They're easy to shoot, but not easy to find. Okay, check the teeth on your oscillation gear as we go to reinstall the base of this reel. Oscillation gear gets grease everywhere, inside the cavity, on the parts that are going to run against the back case, on the face where the crosswind gear is going to slide, or the crosswind block rather, this is the crosswind gear, and in the teeth that are going to mesh with the gear on the back of the main drive. Set that in place. Now this came out without impacting the axle shaft, so we're going to just put that axle shaft back in. Same thing with this crosswind block then. Get some grease on the face of that. You don't need to grease any other parts. That's the only part that's going to be touching something else. Then you want to grab the crosswind block and get that stud into the cavity of that block. Grease is making it sticky, but there you go. Now I think we can bring the axle shaft down and in. I think what we'll do before we do that is we'll put the rotor back on. Can't put the rotor back on. Let's put the axle shaft back on. Do you remember why we can't put the rotor back on? Well, the rotor is going to cover that last side plate screw. So we're going to work this way. I'm going to put the axle shaft in. Tighten that down with the flathead screw that belongs in there. And I'm looking here, and yes, we do have the clearance for the back gear. On some of the reels that you work on, you will not have the clearance. You will need to remove that axle shaft in order to pull the main gear out. Well, you can see this is run dry. Again, this reel is probably at least 5 years old, based on when Gander Mountain went out of business. And I actually have a couple of Gander Mountain reels around here somewhere. They're very nice. I had the tournament reel, and that served me very well. Okay, the main gear is all greased up. We can put that in next. Important to note on this, if you were taking pieces and parts off, there is a shim washer that goes between your main gear and the bearing in the case. This is the bearing in the case. We've already oiled that. So let's go put the side case back on then. And you should have a nice solid snap like we just heard there. Let's go to our parts tray then and get the screws that are going to hold that in. We noticed when we took them out that all 4 screws are the same screws. So it doesn't matter which part you put in where, just put them all in. When I have a kind of a cross hatching like this, I like to go high and low to keep equal tension onto the case. It's kind of happens from time to time. It doesn't happen frequently, but it does happen where you can get the case to bind if you kind of went around in a circle format. So I just like to keep moving them kind of side to sides. Bring this one up top. That's the one that was the reason why we couldn't put the rotor on first, but that's okay. And then we'll put the one in the back here. And those of you that watch my channel know I don't play well with small parts from time to time. And we're not playing well right now. Alright, we'll get this in. Patience. The ability to laugh at yourself. Alright, there we go. That's in. Now we can take our rotor. There's a flat side on the pinion gear. Make sure you're on the flat. And then this is a hex kind of hold fast. You can see how it sits in the spool. Make sure that when you do this, it's in the spool. Remember, we took this off in a clockwise manner, so it kind of goes on like you would normally take a nut off. It goes on in a counterclockwise manner. So if you're trying to thread this and it's driving you nuts because it's not grabbing, just remember you took it off in the opposite direction. And then put it back on going counterclockwise. Let's tighten that up. your time, give it a spin, make sure it's spinning. This is a beautiful reel. And let's get the hold fast screw that's going to keep that rotor nut from twisting off. And we can see where that little tag from that spool has been injuring the reel. We got a scrape going on there. Next up then is the click ratchet and the spool shim. That's for the line guide, or line height, not guide. And then before we finish this, we'll do two things. We'll put the handle on, and then we're going to go into that little clicker, that little noise maker, and see if we can't straighten that out. I'll also service the drag washers on this reel. Okay, that's on. And we're getting close to the end. All right, let's find a small screwdriver for that, a small Phillips head screwdriver. I have a set of micro drivers that I leave right on my desk because I get to use them a lot. There's two little screws that are holding that on, and boy do I mean little. So be careful with these when you take them out. You don't want to lose these, and they can get knocked around pretty easily. You can see that it's bent out of square. This is all you got to do. Just kind of use your finger pressure to bend it back. It's kind of I don't want to say flimsy, that's the wrong word, but it's kind of a light metal there. And that little clip should ride inside the well there. I'm going to use a little pick to align, and then I'll have some fun with the small screws. And actually success there. Look at that. I actually was able to get that in. I'm not sure if this is magnetized or it's just a good tight fit. Some of my tools over time have become magnetized. All right, so that's inside the spool where it belongs now, in that little cavity. And well, we'll see how we did. Let's do one more thing here. Let's service the drag washers up top. These are probably felt drag washers based on my experience. They are felt drag washers, and felt drag washers need to be oiled. They need to be kept flexible. If they don't, they're going to dry out and they're going to tear, and then, well, they become useless. I use fishing reel oil for that. You're going to find that there are two metal washers like this. We alternate drag washers and metals. The two go top and bottom. They're called keyed washers. The one in the middle is called an eared washer, and we just repeat the process. So the next one in, nice healthy dose of oil. The eared washer finds the two slots in the spool, followed by the last of the washers here. The top keyed washer. And then all we need is this clip. Now this clip rides in a groove in the spool. And this is probably the most neglected part of any service. For some reason people just don't think, oh, I better check the drag washers up top. And they just do what they can do, move on. And it's unfortunate, but you'll, like I said with this one, you'll see that they tear, and then, well, it becomes too late. You lose your drag tension, or you foul and lose fish, and you get all kinds of mad. Test it to make sure that it's tight, and then back that off. You're backing it off because if you leave that button tight, it's going to act as a press. It's going to squeeze out all of the oils that you just put on there, and it's going to lead to premature wear of them. All right, this is it. This is your Gander Mountain Vortex 2000. Nice smooth operating reel. I really do like these reels a lot. It's kind of a shame they went out of business. But look at that. When we bottom down, we don't have tick, 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 tick any longer. We have a nice smooth operating reel. Well, Tom, thanks for sending this one in. It's been my pleasure to service it. I hope that everybody's learned a little bit from it in terms of how to work on one of these reels. To all of our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for all it is that you do to keep us safe. I do appreciate the efforts of fire and police, rescue and EMT, and all the folks that are public servants and have chosen that as a career. To everybody, please enjoy the art of reel repair. Make sure that you keep your reels serviced. If you can't do it yourself, find somebody who can do it for you. The expense of the servicing is a lot cheaper than repairing it when it does break, and it also keep you fishing worried free in the future. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.